My goodness, it makes me so happy to hear that wonderful, wonderful and exciting music, dance music by Leyland Harris that was In the Outside, Queer Dances. We're so excited to be here with you today. My name is Tom Clues. My pronouns are he and him. I am the executive director and cellist of Crossing Borders Music, and welcome to Voices of the Proud, where we're going to celebrate LGBT composers. And when I say LGBT, I should mention that includes Q, I, A, and all the other letters, all the other identities that go along with that. So happy to be here with you today, the Sunday before Transgender Day of Visibility, this Thursday on the 31st. And I am here with a very special guest co-hosting with me today for the second time on one of these live stream programs. Wonderful, brilliant young composer, Rylan Gleave. Hey, Rylan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. I'm Rylan. I'm a composer-performer based in Leith in Edinburgh, usually. And it's really lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being back with us, a friend of the organization, Rylan. So the composer of that last piece, Leyland Harris, I was amazed to find out we were just received an unprecedented number of submissions to our call for scores for this program featuring LGBT composers. It was very difficult to choose between them. I wish that we could play every single submission, and we ended up choosing pieces just based on our own idiosyncratic needs. So there were wonderful, I want to just acknowledge wonderful, wonderful compositions that were submitted to us that we just weren't able to include in this program, but they're no less worthy. I was amazed to find out Lelland is an undergraduate music student. I was just floored. It was just incredible, incredible writing from such a young artist. Yellendus Lelland describes himself as a young queer and trans composer. His past projects include composing music for the Wisdom Wednesday podcast and a clarinet solo in 2021 for the Claridoscope competition, clarinet kaleidoscope competition, but it's called the Claridoscope competition. He likes to experiment with unique harmonies and contrasting styles, and he's a fourth-year bachelor's music student at the University of Western Ontario in London, Canada. So congratulations, Lelland. We really enjoyed playing your wonderful piece. I wanted to also credit the performers, Marianne Parker on piano, Jen Leckie and Rasa Mahmoodian on violin, Seth Van Embden on viola, and yours truly playing cello, Tom Clues. And while I'm making credits and crediting people, I wanted to also acknowledge a wonderful composer, another sort of friend of the organization, Karen Brown, who a year ago suggested this theme of having an LGBT composers theme when she heard our mission. The mission of Crossing Borders Music is to use music to promote the dignity of people from all cultures. Karen heard that and said, I really enjoy that mission statement because cultures can be defined in so many different ways. There are so many different kinds of cultures. There are geographic or national cultures, but there are also cultures that have to do with identities. And she suggested having a program that highlighted LGBT culture. And I guess, Rylan, if you don't mind, I would ask you if you sort of agree that there's sort of a unique culture around LGBT identities for many people.
Yeah, I would say for sure. I think when you are with people from your own community, that sense of culture feels quite grounded, feels quite strong. And it can be something that's that bit more difficult to find when you're not necessarily in it. So I think it's lovely that Karen suggested that to you and that it also resonated with you that we were able to do this today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I also wanted to point out, and something that was important to Karen is to point out that there have been LGBT people, including LGBT composers and musicians from every culture and every time period throughout history and throughout the world. And in fact, another sort of friend of Crossing Borders Music, and a member of the LGBT community, Sonia Stahl, another wonderful composer who please check out her wonderful works. Sonia said in an email, "There's probably a high proportion of us in the arts world. It's possible to program an entire season of queer composers from the standard rep of hollowed dead white men," she wrote, "and not have the audience realize you're even doing anything specific." She continued, "Related, at the beginning of the pandemic, I started learning concertos. The first three were Bernstein, Barber, and Tchaikovsky, who, if you don't know, all happen to be gay composers." She wrote QED, as if to say, "I proved my point." And then she added, "Listen to Bolero lately," which was written by Maurice Ravel, another almost certainly gay composer. And she signed it with a wink and signed it Sonia Stahl, Sonia Leonore Stahl, comma, "practicing Copland for the orchestra," another gay composer. So I just want to point out that there are so many LGBT composers and so many LGBT musicians throughout different time periods and throughout different cultures and parts of the world, even though we're focusing today on living composers.
Focusing on living composers, moving us on. The next piece is "In Effect, It Is This, That I Love You" by Ethan Soledad, who uses he, him pronouns. Ethan writes that this piece is inspired by a love letter written by the World War I poet Wilfred Owen to his colonel, mentor, and fellow poet Siegfried Sassoon. Both literary legends were known for their raw depictions of war in their poetry, with Sassoon serving as a major influence to Owen's work. Both were also closeted homosexuals in a time and place where it was criminalized. But even so, the incredible bond between them formed during their time together is so evident in the unrelenting love and admiration that Owen exemplifies in his letter, which I'm going to read a bit from here. So this is from the 27th of November, 1917, Owen's letter to Siegfried Sassoon. Know that since mid-September, when you still regarded me as a tiresome little knocker on your door, I held you as Keats and Christ and Elijah and my colonel and my father confessor and Amenophases fourth in profile. What's that mathematically? In effect, it is this, that I love you, dispassionately, so much, so very much, dear fellow, that the blasting little smile you wear on reading this can't hurt me in the least. If you consider what the above names have severally done for me, you will know what you are doing. And you have fixed my life, however short. You did not like me. I was always a mad comet, but you have fixed me. I spun round you a satellite for a month, but I shall swing out soon, a dark star in the orbit where you will blaze. It is some consolation to know that Jupiter himself sometimes swims out of ken.
So an intense love letter, or these intense love letters from these closeted gay men in World War I. And one of them tragically passed away shortly after, or in the final days of the war. So not too long after these letters. Such an intense and moving exchange, and I think we really hear that in this piece. Let's give it a listen.
Oh, the reverence so present in that I feel is audible. I feel you can almost hear how deeply Ethan has understood the characters and that kind of love. And what was so present for me as well was the outer space images. Like I hadn't quite clocked before, but I was almost hearing the stars and the satellites. It was so beautifully evocative, gorgeous piece of music.
It makes me almost want to cry. It's
Mm.
so so heartfelt. For me, the beginning, it feels just like young love, and that's such like excitement. You can't contain it in yourself. And then at the end, the tragedy situation, it's all in there, and so lyrical and rich. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you. So one thing about that piece, it was written about these men in love, and they couldn't express who they were to the world. They felt that in the army in World War I, it just wasn't possible to be out with their identities. And today, I'm almost certain that somebody watching, maybe you're watching, and you don't feel right now that you can be out with who you are, and identify as LGBT or a related identity. And I wanted to say, you know, I'm always thinking about how we as an organization can be affirming and how we can support people, especially those whose stories aren't being told and who we don't hear from, and people who, for whatever reason, including a lot of very legitimate reasons about, you know, safety and physical safety, emotional safety. If you are somebody who doesn't feel that they can be public with their identity in every context, know that this concert is still for you, and we support you, and we affirm you, and this music is for you as well. And we are for you as well. Is there anything that you would want to?
No, beautiful sentiment. You are just as valid whether or not you come out as soon as you know, if it takes you forever, if you never do it. It's nuanced, it's different for everyone. And I think a really beautiful sentiment there, Tom.
Thank you, Rylan. And in fact, of the many composers who I mentioned, it's really, as far as I can tell, only really sort of in the last 100 years or so that any of those people have really felt that they might be able to be sort of public with their LGBT identity, and even in many cases that wasn't possible even in the last 100 years. And I was talking to Miguel Del Aguila, who is a wonderful composer who we'll hear from later and will be a special guest later, saying that oftentimes these musicians' own families and heirs tried to negate their identity, said a part of our identity was negated. And so we want to undo that, that making of the invisibility. We want to make visible today these identities and be proud of them. So speaking of wonderful LGBT composers, Rylan, who's next?
So next up we have Frida V de la Sota, who uses she, her pronouns. Frida writes, "My musical vision has evolved to focus intensely on the authentic and honest creation that distinguishes my locality, reflects the music scene that surrounds me, and above all, exposes my essence and understanding of the world." Is Frida also a poet as well as a composer? This is beautiful.
She is a wonderful artist. And actually, maybe we could see her website. Maybe we can put that up on the screen in a little bit here. We're going to hear a performance. There it is. We're going to hear this performance of Elegia De Una Pandemia, or Elegy for the Pandemic, or for a Pandemic. And on the first page of the score, speaking of poetic sentiments, she wrote this beautiful made this beautiful quote from F.W. Robertson. And that is, "Hay un pasado que se fue para siempre, pero hay un futuro que todavía es nuestro," which translates as, "There is a past which is gone forever, but there is a future that is still our own. And so I really love that sentiment of we're looking back on the past, but we're also looking to the future. And I think that's very appropriate for this performance, this live stream, and also for Trans Day of Visibility. We're looking on the past. We're looking at obstacles and difficulties and barriers that are erected for transgender people and LGBT people, but we're also looking at the accomplishments and celebrating those accomplishments and looking towards the future of what's going to come. Because this is an elegy, I wanted to, it's for a pandemic, for the pandemic. In addition, I wanted to dedicate this particular performance to a couple people who were trying to make a better, who were working to make a better future. They were active in the Chicago Therapy Collective, which is a wonderful group of trans artists in Chicago. They do beautiful, beautiful work. And one of those people who was supporting those efforts, and also a trans activist, Elise Mallory, sadly passed away very recently. And so I would like to dedicate this performance to her, as well as a second member of that community who also helped in the Chicago Therapy Collective artistic projects of transgender artists, who was not a very public person, I knew him very well. Those who knew him, he will always have a place in our hearts. And because he was not a very public person, I won't mention his name, but still we are thinking of these individuals who worked so hard, and want to remember them with this performance. So My goodness. My goodness.
Incredible. Such a beautiful blend of heartbreak and hope. Similarly to Ethan's piece, that balance is such a fine one to strike, and I feel like it was perfect there. It was tense in all the right ways, in all the right moments, and then beautifully let out in other parts. Stunning.
Bittersweet. I've seen Frida is watching us. Frida, congratulations. It was an honor. It's an honor to be able to share your music and your work. Thank you so much. Our next piece is by Xenia St. Gilbert, and she titles it "How to Spot a Trans Woman According to My Neurologist." And I find this piece just amazing. First of all, a very vulnerable subject. It's my understanding that she took a comment made by a politician that was quite hurtful to many trans folks about how to spot a trans woman. And she sort of brilliantly deconstructs it by turning it into this absolutely ridiculous sentiment using a pun. Actually, I would just like to remind everybody what didn't occur to me when I first heard this, which is that to spot can mean to help somebody weightlifting. And I think that's very important to know. To spot can also mean not only to see somebody, but also to help them with weightlifting, to help them with their weights. So just beautiful, incredible the way that she takes this kind of awful, hurtful language and just turns it into something just totally absurd and just sort of destroys it. Rylan, I understand you know Xenia.
Yes, we have been internet friends, I think, since the start of the pandemic, so about 2 years now, and often reply to each other's Instagram stories with just loads of hearts. And, when you're like, it's in the morning or it's late at night and you've got lots of stuff in your mind, I feel like Xenia is always there for that kind of chat. And it's just lovely. I think she's wonderful.
Wonderful. I think we might be able to see her website also. Or a website where you can learn more about Xenia St. Gilbert. Xenia is a wonderfully talented, there it is, a wonderfully talented performer as well, and wrote this piece with full awareness of what the viola can do. It's a very virtuosic viola solo with sort of a voiceover provided by Xenia, and I just wanted to credit Seth Van Embden. Did an amazing work in transforming Xenia's vision into a reality. And I feel like this piece puts transgender themes right in the forefront. And so, Rylan, I wanted to ask you, what is Transgender Day of Visibility, and why is it important? Why should we know about it?
Well, just to preface with saying, obviously, I don't speak for the entire community, but from where I am, it's an annual awareness day of remembrance and kind of celebration, dedicated to celebrating the accomplishments of trans people around the world, but also raising awareness of the work that still needs to be done in order for trans justice to be achieved. And I think Xenia's piece here is especially poignant because that trans justice, as she so beautifully outlines, isn't achieved. And yeah, I'm really excited to listen to it.
Wonderful. Let's dive right in.
Hello. My name is Xenia. I am a trans woman. I have an authority problem, and I am here to tell you a story. Flashback. It's November 2000. I am a baby, and my head is growing way too fast. December 2000. The problem is solved. Flashback. It's February 2004. I am a toddler, and my brain is farther back in my head than it should be. March 2004. The problem is solved. Flashback. It's January 2006. I am having migraines. we go get a neurosurgical opinion. February 2006. The problem is not solved. Flashback. It's March 2006. I'm still having migraines. It's time for a second opinion. So my parents take me to Ken Barson. Okay, for legal reasons, that's not his name. You can figure it out, honey. Flashback. It's May 2015. Ken Barson announces he is running for president. Flashback. It's March 2016. Ken Barson drops out. Flashback. It's November 2016. Donald Trump, name also changed for legal reasons, is elected President of the United States. Flashback. It's December 2016. Donald Trump appoints Ken Barson Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Flashback. It's July 2020. Ken Barson, as HUD Secretary, puts out a directive explaining to women's homeless shelters how to spot a trans woman so they can deny her housing. This cruel attack on basic human decency has been widely condemned by trans advocates. So let's talk about it. Here's how to spot a trans woman, according to Ken Barson. Okay, I'm sorry. I lied. It feels cruel to expose you to Ken Barson's gross rhetoric. So instead, here's how to spot a trans woman according to a trans woman. So, how do you spot a trans woman?
Well, first, you come up close, and you want to make sure she knows what you're doing. So you want to explain to her everything that you're going to do. You say to her, I'm gonna grab the weight, I'm gonna help you unrack it, and then as you start to do some reps, I might let go for a bit, but then I'll come back and I'll be there to catch it later. Or you could say to her, I'm gonna help you unrack this weight, and I'm gonna move it with you. I'm gonna be under it with you. I'm gonna be up close in your space, in your zone. I'm going to hold under it in case you start to falter. So anyways, after you've explained what you're going to do, you grab the weight, you make sure that she's prepared, that her breathing is prepared, that she looks ready and confident. Then you unrack the weight, and then you slowly let go of the weight, and depending on what the situation calls for, you either stay there with it, or you can back up, and you watch her do her reps, and you keep an eye on how her face looks, like how the control is, how the weight is moving. If it's like starting to wobble, or starting to lose form, starting to become unbalanced, or like fall down on one side, or it seems like she's moving in a way that's like foreign or unusual, those are all reasons you should maybe come up and if not grab the weight already, just be ready to take the weight away. So anyways, let's say that she's on towards her last reps. You're grabbing the weight. Maybe the last rep, you have to help a little bit. And then you unrack the weight with her. And then after you unrack the weight, you want to come check on her. Make sure she's got water. If she's feeling faint, you want to have her lie down for a second. You want to check in with her about how she's feeling. That she's not feeling faint or nauseous, that she can kind of take a minute to recover correctly, and that she doesn't rush that minute of rest. And that's how to spot a trans girl or a trans woman.
That's really beautiful. I love the feeling of community and camaraderie that comes from that sense of spotting a trans woman. Thank you for that. How did you first get into powerlifting?
A friend of mine I knew, a composer, he was into powerlifting, and I had seen videos of him bench pressing with a lot of weight and a lot of chains. And it looked like a really amazing and just like powerful thing to be doing. And we got to talking, and I had pretty bad back problems at the time, like sore back. He said, well, you know, it's possible powerlifting could help your back. And then so that combined with it looking interesting, I gave it a try. And, you know, I met a group of people, Satanists actually, who were very, like, people that are very positive about each other and positive about their bodies and positive about like their strength and their ability. And they were training 3 days a week, and I tried to keep up with them as much as I could. And I couldn't quite keep up with them that much as 3 days a week, but it got me into like this regular sense of like community. And I also really like just a very intense experience. And it's an experience that afterwards you feel like you are a powerful person, like regardless of the weight numbers or anything like that. So that's what got me into it.
That's really awesome. Satanists are the best. Circling back to the first question, can you talk about how spotting a trans woman relates to supporting your community in general?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's important to like watch out for check in with each other more often than we do. I think it's always good to like check in on where someone's at, like even really basic things like if they're hydrated or like if they slept well or how they're feeling today or like if they've had anything salty lately, especially for trans women. Those are things that you would ask maybe right before you lifted. Those are things you could also just ask anytime. And I also for me, there's something really nice of just the physicality of that gesture of helping another and like being physically there for someone. In a time right now, I guess, it's hard to be physically there for someone. But I think also that sometimes we underestimate our own strength. And I think that powerlifting is a way that you could realize what your own strength is in a way. And I think having people around you that are down to support you enable that.
That's really lovely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This has been How to Spot a Trans Woman According to a Trans Woman. My name is Xenia. I am a trans woman. I have an authority problem, and I came here to tell you a story. May my neurosurgeon be forgotten.
Honestly, one of the best pieces I think I've ever heard. It's transportative, it's playful, it's subversive, it's hilarious, and the music within the conversation is so expertly constructed. And Seth, might I add, is absolutely shredding that. That sounds incredible.
Absolutely. Seth, thank you for your artistry. Xenia, thank you so much. You are a trans woman, you have an authority problem, and you had a story to tell. And we heard it, and we're sharing it. We're so honored to be able to share your story and your unbelievable deconstruction of this incredibly hurtful language. How do you spot a trans woman into something playful and beautiful? It is amazing how you made that transformation into something playful and beautiful from that ugly language. Incredible, incredible work. And actually, Xenia, I know, is watching today. I've seen her commenting. So hello, Xenia, and congratulations, as are many of our composers. And actually, our next composer is having a watch party at his home in Milwaukee, and he's going to take a break. His guests to join us. Hello, Tony Doubek.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, good to see you, Tony.
It's good to see you too. Thank you for having me, and thank you so much for performing this piece. It's very exciting. This is the first time. This is the first time that a piece of mine has been performed live and is not an orchestral mock-up. So it's very exciting.
Oh, that's so special. Congratulations. Yeah. That's amazing.
Thank you. It's been very exciting. It's been an exciting year. I've written a couple of pieces that are going to be performed in various parts of the contemporary classical world this year. So it's an exciting year.
You know, awesome. Tony, I saw on your website that you had said that this was the first time, what you just said now, first time you had music played. What was that, by a live?
By real people and not by my computer.
When I read that, I was just floored. You are an incredibly talented musician. And I was just so shocked to read that. It's an honor to be able to play your music. And in fact, this arrangement that you made particularly for us.
The piece was originally written for 3 pianos and strings, and I knew that at some point I was going to have to rearrange it, because who has 3 pianos? I imagined, if it was ever performed in the original way, that it would probably be 1 or 2 actual pianos and then keyboards by 2 other musicians. But I knew that eventually I was going to have to do a couple of arrangements for it, and piano and strings was how it was always, in my head, going to be rearranged. And so this was a great opportunity to make that arrangement for the final movement. And I'm really glad that I got the chance to do that.
We are so honored that you were able to do that for us in particular. It was just an honor to be. I had no idea that we were the first time that a real ensemble floors me, because I think your music is gorgeous and brilliant. And in fact, maybe we could put up your website here on the screen in just a minute. So if people would like to learn more and play this piece or so many of your other great stuff.
There's a lot of great stuff on SoundCloud. I was having a bit of a deep dive this week.
Thank you. I really like SoundCloud. I've kind of moved away from Spotify, and just kind of, so if anyone is looking for my stuff, there is a little bit on Spotify, but SoundCloud and my website are where you can find most of it. And you can find the rest of this piece on both my website and SoundCloud. This piece in its entirety is a musical depiction of my personal experience being somebody who has bipolar II. And so the first 2 movements, the first movement is kind of the depiction of what it's like when you're trying to like keep up with the fast pace of just modern life and keeping up with everything, and how it can kind of take its toll in a depressive episode in particular. And the second movement is kind of a lot of people who have bipolar, either 1 or 2, experience having high levels of empathy as well, and how sometimes it is a little bit hard to separate your emotions from other people's, especially if you maybe aren't necessarily aware of how much it's affecting you. And so the second movement is kind of fugue-like, in it has one melody line, and then it has 5 different versions of that melody line that come in and play with it. And it's kind of that depiction of being in a big social situation and kind of holding all of these emotions in your body. And then the movement that's being played today is the final movement, and that one is about my experience at the beginning of a manic episode. And mania, I think in particular, gets a really, really bad reputation for folks who have bipolar. I think it's where the stigma ends up happening a lot. And the experience for mania is very different for everybody who does experience it. And for me, a lot of the times at the beginning of a manic episode, everything's a lot brighter. And it's been some of those points have been some of my highest creative moments. I've written some really incredible pieces when I'm in that state. I have this just high creativity level. It's in my head. It's just kind of very, I almost kind of picture it a little synesthetic at times, of just like very colorful things happening and synapses firing. And that's what the movement that's being played today really portrays. And I'm really excited to share it with everybody.
Oh, Tony, thank you so much for sharing. We're so excited too. And Tony, I remember when we spoke on the phone, and one of these days I hope to get up to Milwaukee and meet you in person.
Yeah.
And have a great cup of coffee, since I know you like coffee as much as I am, which is as much as I do, which is hard to imagine.
Oh, I am a big coffee nerd. I shouldn't admit how many different ways of brewing coffee we have in my house.
But in addition to talking about coffee, I remember one thing that we talked about was, and something that I really appreciate about you is how open you are about talking about these things about bipolar II and about depressive episodes and manic episodes. And so often I feel like there's a stigma around these things, and you, by talking about them, take power over that stigma, not only for yourself, but for other people who might not be ready to take that step. And I just want to thank you. I mean, I think that it's just incredible to talk about it and write it into your music.
Yeah. And it's something that's really intentional. When I came out as transgender, I came out in 2012. Laverne Cox was not on the cover of Time magazine yet. Aidan Dowling was not in the competition for Men's Health magazine. Like, these things had not happened yet. The only things that I knew were some really terrifying statistics about what it was like to live as a trans person. And I didn't see anybody like me. And I was in college at the time. I was a music major, and I left. I left the music department, and I was like, there's no place for people like me in, the classical music world. Who in the film industry is going to take a composer seriously to get any opportunity? And so I was like, cool, well, I guess my job is activism now. And so I went and got a political science degree. And the combination of those two things, of having had 20 some odd years experience in music, plus having this experience within political science. I did a lot of political philosophy study, and then going in and having a few years working as an activist really kind of shaped the way that I look at music now. And one of the jobs that I had, I worked with LGBT young people at a nonprofit here in Milwaukee. And what I was noticing was the nonprofit world, at least here, it didn't seem like it was serving the youth the way that it could. And so I had a conversation with them. I ran into them off the job, and I had an honest conversation with them. And I said, are these programs doing anything? Are you learning anything? And they were like, not really. We're there for the incentives, honestly. And I said, okay, I appreciate you being honest with me. What does make a difference? And all of them said art, music, theater, entertainment industry, like culture. And so I said, okay, I went back to music, and I decided to really focus on finding ways to increase diversity within the music world. And at the same time that I was having these conversations, the Wachowski sisters released Sense8. And the Wachowskis, for those of you who don't know, the Wachowski sisters are two trans women. They are the creative minds between the Matrix, behind the Matrix, Cloud Atlas, V for Vendetta, Sense8, and several other things. And they were a huge inspiration for me because I saw two trans people out there creating content, and it wasn't a coming out story content. It was more than that. And so it was very inspiring for me to see that. And today, you know, I do write some stuff that's just like, you know, I work in film. I write a couple of things that are just because they're pretty and because I like them and because it's fun music. But especially in my contemporary classical work, I always kind of have a message in there. And I just released a piece. Actually, it's my first piano suite. And that piece was written as a reaction to an article that I saw while I was scrolling through Instagram. A group of men had desecrated and burned a trans flag. And I was affected by it more than I really expected myself to be, because, you know, I see this all the time. I see articles about violence against trans people to a point where I'm almost desensitized to it, where I'm like, oh, cool. Yep. Another time. Yep. It happened again. It happened again. Like at a point you're just like, I guess it's like, you don't even really know how to respond after a while because you're so exhausted. But this image really hit me. And the piece has two titles. The first title is Our Ideas Bulletproof. And the first four movements were just kind of about me dealing with that and dealing with, you know, this violence that continues to happen, and dealing with the fact that it's always trans people who are talking about it, or at least it feels like it is. And I was so frustrated that I was going to have to make a statement because I wasn't going to see anybody else make a statement. And I was so done with the feeling that, with just feeling like marginalized people are always having to fight for their rights. And the piece, I really wanted to kind of make that statement of, we can't do this without other people. Oppressed people cannot fix their own oppression. And we need help from other people to do that. And that was, you know, I just had that overwhelming sense of, does anyone care enough to really actually help if they're not part of the affected community, or if they don't have loved ones who are affected by this. And it took me a really long time to figure out what I wanted to say with the final movement of it. And it didn't realize until this year, actually, what it was about. And that final movement is very inspired by the Won't Be Erased hashtag that was really prevalent on social media right around the same time, and has continued to remain relevant to this day. And so that final piece is that final movement in the piano suite is just kind of about that drive of, we are still here and we will not let anyone change that. Burning a trans flag does not mean that we are no longer here. It just means that now we're angry and we're coming for you. But that piece, I released that piece this week in anticipation of Trans Day of Visibility, and we'll be kind of talking more about that on my own social media throughout this next week. And just wanted to share a little bit about that in the lead up to this week, and to kind of reminding people that we're here, and we are here. We're always here. We're always here. And we might make a little bit more noise today. We might be a little bit more visible today, but we're always here, and we're always fighting for visibility.
Oh my goodness, Tony. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. This is beautiful. What I heard you say is that we're here, and I just want to say back, especially with Trans Day of Visibility coming up, we see you.
Yeah,
we see you right there. There you are, and we affirm you and we support you. And I also heard you say, I'm transgender, and also I'm a person.
Yeah,
it is a part of who I am, and also I'm a guy, and I have a life, and it's not the only thing that defines who I am.
Exactly. I have a really fantastic mentor here in Milwaukee who told me one time, and it sticks with me, and I think he finds it very funny that it comes up so much. But he told me your queerness and your transness are only pillars in the house of who you are. And, you know, at the time I was a young activist and, you know, didn't really fully hear that. And it took me a little while to really understand what that meant. But that is something that I think it's not just for, you know, us to know as LGBT people that, you know, our identities, especially when you first come out, it's hard to not just be like, flags, rainbow flags everywhere. My whole life is about being really queer. And, you know, I think for when you first come out, it kind of feels like that. But I think it's important for other people to know too, like, we are just people. We have jobs, we have partners, we have favorite foods, we have weird food combinations, we went to college, we have hobbies, you know, we have spiritualities, we have all of these different things, you know, we're more than just queer or trans. Like, we are as complex as anybody else.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Tony. I'm so looking forward to hearing this kind of world premiere arrangement that you made specifically for this event. Is there anything that you'd like, you mentioned talking about Bipolar II, is there anything briefly that you would like people to keep in mind as they're listening?
No, I think just really enjoy. I think, you know, the thing about this piece is to really know is this is just, for me, this is what it feels like in those moments. This is what is happening within my mind and within my body when I'm at this point in a cycle. For me, it's this is just the depiction of what my personal experience is. Everybody experiences their own mental health differently. Somebody with bipolar 2 may have a very different experience with manic episodes than I do, and just kind of across the board, you know, remembering that everyone experiences things differently, and everyone's experience is relative to their own lives. So, and that applies to mental health as well as identity, and anything else. Everything is relative. Normal is relative.
That's a great quote. Really great quote. And yeah, so beautifully summarized. I cannot wait to listen to it. Tom, can we listen to it now?
Yes, yes. I am so excited to share. Here is Mind Over Matter. Wow.
Incredible, really incredible. And I find so difficult to believe that it was an arrangement. It sounds absolutely stunning of it as is. And I did earlier this week listen to the original and go, yeah, this is lovely. But I love the live string version. I think there's something so expressive and beautiful about it. Yeah, thank you so very much, Tony, watching, for sharing that with us. Fantastic.
And thank you, Tony, so much for your music. I feel like, just a sense of like, it's been a very emotional journey by the time we get to that very calm ending. Oh my goodness, and so personal and so intense, and then so beautiful, and then so relaxed by the end. And also, Tony, what powerful, powerful words that you had to share. In fact, what was that quote?
Normal is relative.
Exactly, normal is relative. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Tony. And we'll turn now to another wonderful young composer with me here right now, Rylan.
Hello, it's me. Thank you for having me in so many capacities.
Yeah. Thank you for being our co-host, and thank you for entrusting us with your music.
Oh, of course. I really appreciate you continuing to play it.
You're a friend of the organization, and we love the chance to play your music. You have had many successes already in your emerging career as a composer, and I was so surprised to hear you say that you didn't think that the piece that we're about to hear would ever be performed. I was just shocked.
Yeah, well, it was written in lockdown, in that time where work was quite uncertain, I think, for a lot of people, but there were lots of call for scores going. So I was writing a few different pieces every week for various opportunities and not really expecting to hear back from them, because you always get those not back emails with the unprecedented number of composers, and yep, fair enough. So I think I wrote for something else, and then it, never heard back from them. So I didn't expect that it would be performed. But yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful today that you are performing it. Would you want me to talk a little bit about the concept, about the...
I would love to. Actually, before that, is there anything that you'd like to share about yourself and who you are as a wonderful human being that we know you are, and also as an artist and composer?
Sure. So I'm a composer and a vocalist, based usually in Leith in Edinburgh, although currently I'm in Oxford for some work tomorrow. This is my lovely hotel room. I graduated from my master's degree in July 2021 from the RCS, and so this is my first year of freelancing. It's a little bit scary, but currently going really well. Cannot complain. I'm getting work both as a composer and as a performer, which I think is really important. And I like the balance of that, and I like drawing on various aspects of identity and influences in the creation of my work. I guess kind of similar to what Tony was talking about in regard to activism. Like, I think music for me often comes from both a deeply personal and political place, and I think it's important that those things can coexist and be balanced.
I should mention that something that is important to many transgender people is hiring transgender people. They would like
Pay us.
everybody else, yes, and pay them just as they pay anybody else. Absolutely, absolutely. And then this piece in particular, I found fascinating. I remember writing you saying, we would very much like to play this work, and I have no idea what it's going to sound like. And I was a little bit surprised by your response to that.
Yeah, so for people watching, you'll see it shortly. Tom's put together this lovely video of some of the score interspersed with the video of the performers playing, but it kind of draws on graphic elements. So I've done lots of little doodles that kind of fit in, but as such, you can't really do like a playback version of that. I can't send you like a mock-up MP3 saying, sounds like this, because one of them's like a drawing of a bird. And so I say to my ensemble, what does this bird sound like? You know, here's a creative prompt to add some of your own decisions here before the music moves back into notation. And it's called biomimicry, which is a little bit of a pun. We were talking about Xenia's incredible pun for her piece earlier. So when I started taking testosterone, my voice dropped, and the split occurred where kind of like when cis boys go through puberty, your vocal cords get longer and thicker. The interesting part about mine was one of them got longer and thicker than the other. So singing multiphonics for me is really easy. And it's like, it's been referred to affectionately by some other queer friends as like biohacking. Like, oh, I've biohacked my voice to get all these weird experimental music gigs because now I can do strange techniques. And I was thinking on the, kind of like aspects of being trans and biology and bioessentialism and how we're, reduced to parts so often. But how we kind of can do that to ourselves in quite a reclamatory way. Like, I think it's great that my voice does that. I think it's really funny. And I think also that, because I trained as a classical singer before being a composer as a mezzo soprano a very long time ago. And that balance of like that beautiful, dark, rich sound that I've now kind of inherited as a baritone, but contrasted with this very like guttural kind of spiky sound that comes out of extended techniques that I do. And I was Googling different words that started with bio and being like, research, and biomimicry as something that like the taking things from the natural environment. So like a V formation that birds fly in and applying that to like aircrafts is something that people have done. We've kind of taken those elements and then expanded on them. And I quite like the idea of, taking transition as a part and expanding on it and saying, yes, it's given me these tools or this new equipment, and now what can I do with that? I think the element of like haha transition, but also like development and growth within that is really beautiful. And it wouldn't make sense for that to be over prescriptive. I feel like that has to be quite open for performers to interpret, hence the little doodles of different examples of biomimicry.
So if I hear you right, just as everybody's body is their own and uniquely theirs, everybody's interpretation of this music is going to be their own. And
yeah, definitely it'll be very different ensemble to ensemble if anyone else decides to take it up, but I really love what you've done with it.
Thank you so much, which by the way, I hope if you're listening out there and you are a performer that you might check out this piece and other works by Rylan. Maybe we could put his website up here on the screen in a moment here so you can check out the wonderful work that he does. I actually didn't know that the topic of this theme was related to
I guess it's one that you can choose to reveal. You can say, oh, it's just about this kind of natural biomimicry, taking this, recreating, or you can kind of delve a little bit deeper and say, sure, that is my take on it, but where did I get that take from? Which I think is fun.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing again so personally and transparently, and sharing your beautiful music with us. And without further ado, let's hear the world premiere of Biomimicry by Rylan Gleave.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. My goodness, Rylan, congratulations.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for playing it. And I love the faces that you make when you get to be a whale.
I really connected with
really into it. Yeah, that's great.
Where I took on the identity of a whale.
But I think that's a really lovely part of getting to work in a more flexible way with notation, is that players, if they do connect with something, suddenly have that moment of like, oh, I'm immersed in this, maybe in a different way to play music that is more precisely notated. I don't know if you, as a performer, have any thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely. I really enjoyed, and we were chatting earlier with the change between what we so often get caught up in, where we're trying to just sort of recreate what's on the page as Western classical musicians. And so often we can forget kind of what it's about. And with such a flexible score, with such flexible notation, we were really kind of freed up to think about what is this image that we want to paint, and how are we going to paint this image, and how can we really convey what's on the page. So it was really very enjoyable and sort of freeing as a performer to be able to have that experience. So thank you.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations again. And
thank you very much.
And thank you also for being, once again, our co-host. We have one piece left on our program today, and this is by, again, just an incredible composer. We're so fortunate to have the music and the people that we do telling their stories and sharing their art with us today. Miguel Del Aguila is a 3-time Grammy-nominated composer, and I don't think I've ever heard anything that you've written, Miguel, that I didn't love. Thank you so much for taking this.
Thank you.
To be here with us today.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, Ryland. It's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here. Not only the music, but the theme of this concert, it's so important. I don't know if I'm here representing the gay composers or the bipolar ones. I think since I'm both, that it goes hand in hand, creativity, and so it's well, we did so much progress in the accepting of sexual identity. I think mental health is still a big stigma, and in many ways that should be our next battle. Okay, I'm sorry for the introduction. I just wanted to
Thank you
segue,
Space is open.
to segue on Tony's piece and remarks. Very interesting. Very, we have bipolar, I think it's also like before somebody said how many composers in history we are playing who are gay composers or LGBTQ, and we don't know, right? And the same thing applies to mental issues, especially with bipolarity. When we read now biographies, we can translate whatever language was used to describe some personalities of people in the 19th century. We know now, probably Beethoven, probably all these people were bipolar in so many ways. And I think it's, of course, it's society needs to start accepting that it's important for all of us not to be, a society is better off if people are different and are allowed to express their differences. And it's a good thing. It makes everything more colorful and interesting. It's like we have more restaurants to choose from. But I think mental makeup, it's one of those new frontiers where I think history would have probably a tenth of the art it has and all everything good that it has if it hadn't been for people with different psychological makeup. And it probably shouldn't be seen as a struggle. It's just how we are, all different, and there are great things about it. So
thank you so much. That is so beautiful. And Rylan, I wonder if you have said previously, I think on a previous live stream with us, that your music, you are an autistic composer, and your music is always autistic music. That's who you are.
It is. Yeah, no, definitely agreed with you there, Miguel. Like, you can't separate that aspect of yourself from the artwork, so it's always informing it. And that different makeup means that the variety of music and diverse art that comes out of people who are genetically brain different, etc., is wonderful. Yeah, I think the diversity there and the colors that you talk about are really prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And Miguel, thank you so much for sharing. As I was sharing with Tony, you know, when so often, unfortunately, there's this stigma about different ways that our brains work, and accepting that people's brains work in different ways. And you, by sharing as you did, help take power over that stigma, both for yourself and for other people. I'm so thankful for you for sharing that. So welcome.
Thank you. I guess after that introduction, it's little to say now.
I'm so excited to share this next and last piece on our program that you've written. But before that, is there anything that you'd like to share, Miguel, about yourself as a person and as an artist?
Well, I think you guys know my music, and I've been a composer my whole life, pretty much. Since I was a kid, my idea of making music, or my ideals, were always the composer who was a pianist, who performed his music. So I didn't make a distinction until I started realizing, growing up and realizing you are more one thing or another. To me, it was a natural form of expression. Since I was a little kid, I felt always more accepted. I felt it was my thing to be a musician, and it was also my safe place. You know, I went through military government and a civil war and very repressive government, and it's very strange because I lived my whole teenage years pretty much in that bubble of music that I made myself, and it was so important because nobody had access to it that you didn't let in. And at the same time, it was, you know, an investment for the future in many ways, right? So I studied here, then I came to America, San Francisco Conservatory. I went to Vienna, Austria, where I did my graduate studies, and I lived there for 10 years. And that's pretty much it. I think, as you know, my style, sometimes I'm a kind of a person that I never like to do what I'm told since I was a little kid. And I don't know why, but I think that's probably why, to me, of course, being gay in the 70s, 60s, was much different than now. It was something that people would advise you if you start, talking about this, it's suicidal for your career. And I remember some concerts then, even in Europe, where I traveled with my partner and I was supposed to introduce as a friend, and the orchestra wouldn't let us had made us rent 2 separate rooms in the hotels. Happened quite often because of appearances, because the board people gave money. So it changes things in many ways. But living in Vienna, living in so many different cultures, I think I'm so used to be my whole life to stand away and have a perspective from the main society, really, and not I think it's something common to a lot of LGBTQ people, that we belong to a society, but we also stand a little away. And that is so important for society because it allows us to have a perspective that other people don't have. And artists very often too. And in a way, that's why when tyrants come and military regimes, they always go after these people, which is us in many ways, because we are critical and we question everything, because we don't take anything for granted, that things are supposed to be one way or another. So I always did musically also what I want. And I think it comes from the same personality, from the same, psychology, or from always seeing myself as a different person. That, in my times in Vienna, you were supposed to write one kind of music, which of course I never did and I never cared about. So I wonder if you took away one of these aspects of my personality, if I would have been the same person. And to tell you the truth, yes, of course, we felt so discriminated in many ways then, and now not so much, but still there is a lot to do, right? But there are positive things about it, and I wouldn't change a thing. Even the bad things, even the struggles make you stronger, and they make you who you are, and who you are is really all you have, is you who you are, right? So
all you have is who you are.
yeah, so you better be true to that person.
Getting some fantastic quotes today. These are all going in a big list. I'm going to look back at them every time I'm feeling bad about stuff. That's going to be on my list.
Absolutely inspiring conversation. Thank you so much, Miguel, for sharing. And speaking of being true to who you are, and in your music, I feel like you're my understanding is that your music that you wrote in Vienna and still today very much has those Uruguayan roots. And it was dismissed by the Vienna press as not serious, which is absurd and racist, frankly, and like just...
Well, it wasn't. Some of this, I believe music should be also fun. Yeah. And there are some periods in history where if you enjoy it too much, it's suspicious, right? So, and I think there is another misconception that still happens in America. My music, of course, sounds very Latin and very rhythmic, because rhythm, it's a very important part of Latin music. And if you don't understand the culture, very often people especially think of it in Northern Europe, right? They see rhythm as an expression of happiness, or they immediately see some colorful Carmen Miranda ballerina jumping up and down, right? Which is nothing farther from the truth, because maybe that's because of also partly because of the indigenous and the Black influences, that rhythm, it's a very serious thing. It's very often is how you communicate with a higher being and with God and with the world of the mystical, right? It's a religious. They use rhythm for that expression in the same way Bach would use chorales and the voice in his masses, right? So not every rhythm is happy, and very often it's in my music it's interpreted as that. Oh wow, there comes Miguel with his rhythms, and I think it's important to fine tune culturally to what rhythm and harmony and melody and music itself means to other cultures, right? So
Thank you. Yeah, and
Mm.
speaking of, if you could, would you like to share with us? We're about to hear tambourino.
yes.
Yeah, and how does the rhythm and how do all of these things come together in tambourino?
Tamboreño is, first of all, the word I made it up. It's an adjective meaning drum like. Tambor, it's in many languages a word for drum. Tamboreño means drum like. You know, in Uruguay, there is Carnaval. It's not as flashy as Rio, but it is part of the Carnaval is this group of drummers. It's like an ensemble of drummers. In front of the ensemble, there are dancers. And it happens at night. And so the piece sort of describes, in my way, how I experienced that as a kid. I never took part of it, but you know, it's usually at night, and when the piece begins, as when my memory began of it, the drummers are getting together near the fire, right, and they're warming the skins of their drums. If you play you know, I'm always telling symphony performers, please tight up your skins for the timbales. They're always loose, which, you know, is not how it's supposed to be. So, but coming back to tamboreño, so when the piece begins, there is this fire at night, and they bring their drums to the fire, and there is food going around and drinks, and but there is a mystical element, a mystery. It's always part of this music, that mystery. And so as the drums are being finally tensed and tempered, right? They start playing, but they start spontaneously playing some rhythm, and then the rhythm becomes a group of 50, 60 people playing something that doesn't exist because there is no score. It's just very often improvised. And for us classically trained musicians who have to read every single quarter note, I've always been amazed that how music happens spontaneously. And this piece, in a way, is that. There is, you know, I wrote this piece at the very beginning of the pandemic, and the premiere was supposed to happen 2 years ago, and it happened 10 days ago, actually, in Dartmouth. And we recorded it with Quarteto Latinoamericano and Sally Pincus. We had a great time doing this, and it's so nice to be able to make music again. But even then, I had to keep telling the musicians, this piece is about rhythm. Don't try to put other things into it. There is no, you know, the melody is not that important, the harmony is not that important. It's just the rhythm. You are all drums, which is very hard because when you are you know, Tom, when you are a string player, your training has a big emphasis on the production of sound, the beauty of your phrasing, and rhythm. Probably Vivaldi and this music is very rhythmic, but it's not the most important part. A cello is not a drum. So this is the piece, you know, the rhythm grows and then it ends in a very happy and sort of ecstatic way, in a way.
We loved learning and playing this piece, Miguel. We're so happy to be able to share it. And thank you so much for your beautiful words and everything that you shared. It's just pearls of wisdom today. I thank you so much for all that you've shared with us. before we go, I do want to credit Tavri Crouch is helping us out behind the scenes. We're so thankful to Tavri and all of our composers and guests, Miguel, Rylan, everyone else, the Crossing Borders Music board, and all of the performers. We want to thank you all. And Miguel, you said that you were never able to take part in this experience yourself, but I hope that maybe in a certain way through your music, you're able to take part of it here and now, this mysterious and spiritual thing, and maybe even a certain way, all of us can sort of enter a bit into that world.
Yeah.
So
I took part of it as a listener. Some of my first experiences were to see this marching ensemble, the power of 100 drums or 50 drums. It's something you can't listen to, on your earpods. It's very different.
Beautiful. Well, without further ado, let's hear this amazing work. Tambourino, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy.
you.